All right, let's get started. Welcome, everyone, to the briefing, Sierra Club Pennsylvania's series of live legislative updates. My name is Melissa, she, her pronouns. I'm the senior distributed organizer for Sierra Club Pennsylvania and the facilitator for this series. You'll mostly hear this evening from Jen Quinn, our legislative and political director, and we're also joined by Nate Regal, our clean energy program advocate. I do ask that you stay on mute until we get to the end of Jen's formal slide deck. There will be time for questions at the end. You're also welcome to put your questions into the chat. We are recording this evening, so you'll receive a recording after our session is over tonight, but please be aware of that. If you have your camera on, we are recording and we put these up on YouTube. Closed captioning is running if you need to use that service. And then finally, when we refer to notes, the notes document, or the digest, we are talking about the briefing digest, which is our running document that contains all of the information and action items that we talk about in these sessions. And I'm going to drop the link to that into the chat as soon as I turn it over to Jen. And so with that, take it away, Jen.
All right. Thank you, Melissa. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. I feel validated by folks taking half an hour of their time on such a beautiful day to come and listen to what we have to say. So we definitely appreciate that and hope you find it worth your while. All right. I believe I'm sharing my screen. It would be great there. Hopefully, folks can see that. If you cannot, please let me know. So again, welcome. All right, got a thumbs up. Thank you so much. Again, welcome to the briefing. So as folks know, June is budget month for Pennsylvania. I need to actively work to try to make April 1st or maybe March 1st the budget deadline. So we are doing this sort of drudgery during the winter and not in June. But anyway, June is budget month in Pennsylvania. So negotiations and trade lists are all in full swing. The rumors are running the gamut. It will be delayed like last year, so we won't get a budget until November, or it'll be done on July 1st. Or the second week of July is what I'm hearing most often. So in reality, we don't really know anything about when the budget will be done or what those negotiations actually look like. This is very typical. We tend to get some real information a few hours before the budget is about to pass. So things are on par for how the budget always goes. But this is a great time if you are meeting with your legislator or you want to take a moment to send a quick email or leave a voicemail to make some budget asks. All of my meetings now, I always add just a few quick budget asks because it's really easy. You're already there. And so a few things. There's a link in the briefing notes doc that we'll share that has some a script, a call-in script, and an email that you can do really easily to make some of these budget asks. So what we always ask for: increased funding for DEP and DCNR. The state agency is sort of tasked with maintaining, the environment as well as our parks and forests. They are always habitually underfunded. Continued funding for the Solar for Schools program that was established a few years ago. It was a gentleman's agreement of $25 million a year for 10 years. So we still have to advocate for that every year to make sure that happens. And again, it's a really great program. Schools who want solar can go solar and give the rest of us a break on our property taxes, hopefully. And increased funding for Growing Greener and the Keystone Fund, which again goes to DCNR and open space and parks and trails and all sorts of good things. It's always habitually underfunded. And then to continue the well plugging program that was established a few years ago and increase that funding. I think in the last budget it was funded at 16 million or 24 million. So that's not a whole lot of money when the state has hundreds of thousands of wells to plug. And then more funding for the Hazardous Sites Cleanup Fund. Again, something that is habitually underfunded, and it goes to clean up some of the nastiest sites in Pennsylvania. So if folks would like to make these quick budget asks, we do have the toolkit in the notes doc, or if you're meeting with someone, it's always good to just flag these and get them on people's radar because they're talking about them now. And it's good to reinforce what we want. And so as far as legislation, again, everything is really budget focused now, but there have been some interesting bills gaining a little traction. One is House Bill 2359. This would prohibit state agencies from signing NDAs related to data centers. I think as folks know, often NDAs are signed and then all the information goes dark. Folks are cut out of any sort of discussion. And so this would prohibit that. I think it's a good step in the right direction. We know that data centers don't like this, but there have been some conversations around this lately, and we're hoping that it will gain some more traction. And then another really interesting bill, there was a hearing on this yesterday. This is an energy storage or battery storage bill. It would require large electric distribution companies, so folks like PECO, PPL, Duquesne, to procure or build 3,000 megawatts of storage by, I think it's July of 2033. I'm going to close this so I can actually see my slides. Yes, 2033. And that would be determined by, those shares would be divvied up depending on like the service load and the peak demand of each EDC territory. And when I'm saying energy storage, these four bullets are what the bill covers. So thermal storage, electrochemical storage like batteries, thermomechanical storage like pumped hydro and flywheels, and then hydrogen-based storage, which I don't even know if that really exists. But a good bill, an interesting hearing, and I do have a link for it later on in this presentation. It happened yesterday, but you can still watch the recording. We are hopeful that that will come out of committee and maybe gain some traction also, or be part of a budget trade. And then last week, we also had the governor's GRID proposal. I don't know if folks saw this, but GRID stands for Governor's Responsible Infrastructure Development. This is related to data centers. This is an active link. It will take you to the proposal itself, but it's essentially some best practices for data centers if they want to qualify for the existing sales tax exemption, use tax exemption, and the fast track permitting. So it's a series of like carrots and sticks, and there are four buckets that fall under the GRID proposal. The first of that is energy affordability. So data centers must build, bring, or buy their own power in the same PJM region. And again, they have to pay full costs, no extra burden on PA homes and businesses that can't be passed to ratepayers like us. Clean, firm energy is a requirement. And then part of the buildings have to be solar ready. And then the other three buckets are transparency and community engagement. I think that transparency is, pretty minimal, notifying local governments, hold public meetings, allow input, and then share some information. I guess is the transparency, who will use the data center, the building size, the power and water needs. There's also a workforce and economic development provision. It has to be an investment of over $250 million. It has to create a certain number of jobs, provide prevailing wage, hire and train local workers. And then there is an environmental provision. They would have to meet certain water and energy conservation standards, so like a LEED certification or Energy Star standards. And then there's also sort of responsible resource use if you're located in an exceptional value or high quality watershed. You have certain standards if you're located in, I think, like a climate corridor. There are certain standards where you would have to work with private and public sort of resource agencies or groups, put in some good faith efforts to build responsibly. And so I flag this because we've talked about House Bill 1834 previously on these calls. A portion of GRID, the clean firm requirements, the consumer protection requirements come directly from House Bill 1834. These clean firm requirements are the exact same numbers used in GRID. And my assumption is the reporting requirements in 2150 are also the same requirements that will be in GRID, but we don't know yet. There will likely be one or two pieces of additional legislation that come to implement GRID, most likely the carrots and sticks for the tax exemption and changing that. But again, we just don't know. GRID is pretty general at this point. We're waiting to see what the legislation looks like. And then we will also have to, or the governor's office will have to have that legislation introduced and passed, which is a very difficult task. And I flagged this. I don't know if folks saw this article. There's a link here, excuse me, to Spotlight PA. These were remarks from Senator Majority Leader Pittman on May 18th saying, he doesn't really think we should be looking at individual bills right now. He doesn't want to impact our competitiveness towards neighboring states. And so there's a really big question mark in the legislature to what extent Senate Republicans are willing to even regulate data centers at this point. Now, this is a bipartisan issue. We know a lot of Republicans are supportive of data center regulations or even a moratorium. And so it was really troubling for the majority leader to make this sort of statement. Now, again, is it posturing leading into the budget, for negotiations? We just don't know. But we do know the Shapiro administration has sort of an uphill battle, given the time crunch in the budget, introducing legislation that hasn't even been, I think, written yet. None of us have seen it. So we'll have to wait and see what plays out when it comes to data center regulations and possible budget deals or trades and how that will unfold over the next month or so. And then I wanted to give some updates. So we talked about this bill on the last briefing. This was the ATT or GETS bill, Advanced Transmission Technologies or Grid Enhancing Technologies, essentially upgrading the transmission grid without having to build new transmission with some new technologies. This passed the House unanimously a few weeks ago. That's incredible. That sort of thing never, ever happens. We're really hoping that this will be on a trade list for budget negotiations because it's a really good idea. It's a no-brainer. And again, when you can get bipartisan support on this, it should be something that definitely should pass on its own. But given the state of Pennsylvania, everything is on a trade list at this point. And then again, a bill we talked about a few weeks ago, House Bill 2076. This was the regulatory framework for enhanced geothermal systems or the deep wells greater than 5,000 feet. It also passed the House. I'm a little less optimistic that this will be on a trade list, but you never know. It's a good bill. We were glad to see it pass the House, and hopefully it can gain some traction in the Senate or be on a budget trade list. And then yet another bill we talked about, I just want to give updates on this. This is Senate Bill 980, House Bill 1261. This would ban PFAS containing firefighting foam. Last time we met, we were waiting on a committee vote. It has been voted out of a Senate committee. It was a really tough committee, Doug Mastriano's committee, but it did get out of there. It passed the House unanimously last July, I think. Again, it's super rare that something passes unanimously. I have been told it is on a budget trade list, which is good. The bill should be able to stand on its own since it has a lot of support from firefighters, environmentalists, even the chemical manufacturers are okay with it. But again, given the state of affairs in Pennsylvania, no good policy can stand on its own. So it is on a budget trade list, and we are hopeful that that can be finalized and enacted as some sort of budget deal moving forward. And then some committee meetings. I did mention the House Energy Committee meeting yesterday on the battery storage bill. There is a link here. You can watch the recording. It is a really interesting subject matter. And again, hopefully a bill that'll gain some traction. And then next Monday, the House Environmental Committee will be having a voting meeting on these three bills. House Bill 84, this would prohibit the road spreading of oil and gas wastewater, either for de-icing or a dust suppressant, something they shouldn't be doing anyway, but still do. House Bill 426, this would require Commonwealth agencies to prioritize native species for landscaping, a really easy bill, a small lift. We're glad to see that moving. And then House Bill 1567, this would require community benefit agreements for power plants. This is something we worked with Rep. Mullins on quite a few years ago. It was spurred by a gas plant being built in Lackawanna County, but it's still relevant, especially with the possibility of more and more power plants being built to supply data centers. So there's a live stream here. Folks can tune into that if they would like next Monday. And then session days, as I mentioned, June is budget month. The House should be in for 18 days, probably more than that. The Senate is scheduled for a mere 13 days. They will probably add some days there. And then once they get the budget done, if it's in June, we won't see them until September, but it's very likely there will be at least some July session days scheduled. But once it's finished, they will then have a recess for quite a while until they return in very late September. So again, the window to get things done once the budget is finalized is narrowing very, very quickly. And I think that's my last slide. Yes, I can pass it over to Melissa.
Thanks, Jen. And just our regular reminder, folks, that if you want to get involved in our legislative and policy efforts, both at the state level and federal level, that our chapter advocacy team, or CAT, is a great place to start. We meet virtually, usually on the first Thursday of the month. This month, it's actually going to be on June 11th at 6. So you can click those links there and in the briefing digest notes to learn more. Okay, so we can turn to our questions. We do have one in the chat, and then we will go in the order of hands raised. So you can use the raise hand feature in Zoom to line up, or you can put your question into the chat and we will also check those as well. So our first question is from Phyllis. Would the energy generated that is to be stored be renewable energy or any kind of energy? Why would energy storage be needed for gas or coal-powered plants?
Hey, Phyllis, I'm assuming you're referring to the battery storage bill. So that would have no requirement as to the source. So battery storage is, really useful if you have wind and solar and you're curtailing it. So of course you can store that. But if there's a time of low use where you do have sufficient power on the grid to store power, you can store it when it's cheap. You can discharge it when the grid needs it for like peak shaving, right? On a really super hot day, you can help lower that demand a little bit for um, voltage support. So there's a lot of reasons why storing any type of energy is really useful to the grid. Now, it would be great if it were all clean energy, but at this point, we can't really, or at any point, you really can't sift the electrons. But we're hoping that more batteries and sort of the mandates we're working on will generally lead to more clean energy. But batteries have a lot of positives, regardless of the type of energy they're storing.
All right, and next up we have Howard.
Hi, couple of questions. First of all, I'm wondering about the issue of non-disclosure acts. Does the state have a sunshine law requiring government activities to be made public? And don't the NDAs violate that? And I guess I'd ask that with respect to municipalities and counties as well.
Yeah, I mean, there are sunshine laws, of course, when it comes to like permitting, zoning, there's notice and comment needed. But we do know with certain types of development, especially when you're getting into with like proprietary and national security, that they use NDAs a lot. So I don't know where the line is. I know there's a lot of concern about these. I don't know if Nate knows any more about this. I don't want to put him on the spot, but yeah, so I'm not the best to answer that. We do know there are sunshine laws, but there are issues when it comes to like even the energy and water usage. Like that can only be reported if it's anonymized in the legislation we're working on. So yeah, when it comes to like a deal that a township wants to cut with a data center for a tax break or something, that can be in an NDA. So there are certain things, I am not the expert on it. I'm sorry, but yeah, it's a really opaque situation, and I just don't know enough about it to speak intelligently about where the line is.
And my other question is, it seems like more and more the environmental legislation is being pulled into the budget making process. Is that going to be a pretty consistent tendency where very little environmental work gets done outside of the budget making process?
So unfortunately, that's true for all legislation. It seems that almost any real or significant, important legislating gets done in the budget, which is not how it's supposed to be. But we've seen that for quite a few years. Transportation funding, tax code changes, all sorts of things just get done in the budget. And yeah, I don't agree with it, but it happens uh, with everything at this point.
All right, and our next, oh, sorry, Howard.
No.
Okay. Karen was next.
Yeah, I just wondered if you're seeing any activity around any of the lightning plan bills like community energy.
Unfortunately, no. So I can answer this question and Bill's question together. So Bill's asking about the solar ready warehouses and community energy, community solar, something we've had a lot of conversations about. But a lot of folks, especially Republicans, want to close the Homrick loophole, which is a loophole that certain solar generators take advantage of. And so everything that I've heard is, that needs to be addressed before either House Bill 1260 or House Bill 504, the community energy bill, can move. Now, again, is that true? Is that a good faith, conversation and trade they'd be willing to have? We don't really know, but we do know that net metering reform is really wanted. So both of them Both of them are just stuck at this point. So not a lot of optimism for either of these bills at this point.
Thanks.
Right. So our next question was in the chat from Ray J. PJM is slow rolling approval of electric system improvements. Does it require legislation to mandate shorter approval deadlines?
I'm pretty sure, and I mean, Nate can correct me if I'm wrong, I'm pretty sure PJM is under the authority of FERC. So Shapiro and the governors have some influence on them just because of who they are, and there's a willingness to work with them. But I think officially, legally, they're under the purview of FERC. So I don't know what the state could really do for that. I mean, they can send all sorts of signals and letters and policies, but it's tough to have meaningful influence on PJM. Anything you want to say there, Nate?
I, I'll just say that I have the same interpretation you do with it's really up to FERC when it comes to oversight of PJM. The other bottlenecks are may fall under state, but when it comes to actual PJM, yeah, that's a FERC issue.
Ray J, we can't hear you. It does say you're off mute, but at least I'm not hearing you.
Yes. Can you hear me now?
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
sorry. Um, can Pennsylvania, a regulator agency of some kind get together with Maryland and um, sort of gang up because FERC or PJM covers a district of multiple states, I understand. Has anybody looked into whether Pennsylvania could get together with other states?
Yeah, the governors have done that. I know there have been quite a few letters. There
Thank
was
you.
the price cap that
Yeah.
Shapiro advocated for and extended that happened with other governors. So that has happened multiple times. I know was it in Philly? There was a PJM, right? Nate, I don't know if you went. There was a meeting of multiple governors there talking about this same thing. So I think most folks outside of PJM see it as a black box because there are so few levers available to us, right? It's like utilities and the transmission owners and FERC, and they're super impactful on like our daily lives, but we have very little impact on them. But anything to add, Nate?
Yeah, and this is actually where I see I'm a bit more optimistic maybe than a lot of people here because we do have currently we have pretty active different governors are collaborating, on letters to PJM and to FERC, as well as OPSI, the Organization of PJM States Incorporated, maybe. But anyhow, there's another organization for states to collaborate there, and then often uh, the consumer advocates are getting together and discussing what they can do for the consumer protections when it comes to PJM. And then we have NCEL, national. It's the environmental legislators, state environmental legislators. They also have other legislators from all different states getting together and having these discussions. So to me, the next thing is making sure that all of these different interstate conversations are on the same sheet of music, because that's where I think the real leverage will come in. But that was long-winded, so I'm done.
Yeah, it's probably National Clean Energy Organization, NCE, something like that.
And NCEL is it's like National Caucus of Environmental Legislators or
Oh.
National Conference of and because there's NCSL also of state legislators, and I get the C messed up in that acronym.
So there's a lot going on. Thank you.
All right, Nancy.
There it goes. Okay, Jen, could you prioritize the legislation for us? What should I work on first?
I think, I mean, I would suggest House Bill 1834, the data center bill. Again, supporting data center regulation doesn't mean you support data centers, but you do support the regulation of it. I think it's hugely important. It's a critical bill to have something in place. And then, 2150 is the energy and water reporting. Um, After that, I think the Gets bill, I can't remember the number, 2334, maybe 2333. That was the advanced transmission grid enhancing technologies. That has a really good chance of moving. We can get 20 to 30% more capacity on a transmission line for, a couple $100 million instead of a $5 billion transmission line, right? So it's a no-brainer. It's an easy step. It doesn't mandate anything. So I mean, those are probably the three bills I would really push, and then just keep an eye on grid. We'll probably follow up with that, what comes out of that, because again, we're at the time now where deals need to happen. Folks need to hear what you care about. And when you have the majority leader saying, we don't really need to regulate data centers, we need to push back on that message. But thank you for that question. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
And then from Bill again in the chat regarding affordability, any interest in balcony solar? 6 states apparently have legalized it.
Yeah, so Bill, I can follow up with you. So IBEW 98 has some safety concerns. We mentioned this before vaguely. I got specific feedback from them. There are some places where the bill conflicts with the National Electric Code for backfeeding back into the grid when the power goes out. And then there are certain concerns about circuits in your house and your circuit breaker and things like that. So I talked to someone pretty high up at IBEW who said, these are serious concerns. And so ultimately, I think it's for Rep. PLE to fix this, right? Like, it's not our bill. We're supportive of that. But when a labor union is saying we have these problems, right, we can address them. We should be able to copy what other states did. I don't know exactly what like the Utah bill looks like, but there are, these concerns that IBEW has, and I know the legislature takes unions very seriously, and especially when it's sort of like safety and fire hazard. So that's where we are with that bill right now. There's maybe 4 bullet points from them that need to be addressed before the bill can move. And I'm not aware of, Rep. PLE's plan. So he may have a plan, he may not, but that's where things are. Diana, that was the balcony solar legislation. So this would allow something called like plug-in solar. You can put a small solar panel, on your porch, on your balcony, plug it in, and the small amount of solar it produces would come in, the electricity the solar would produce comes into your house through the plug in your outlet to just reduce your energy use a little bit. That's, I think, House Bill 1971.
Okay, folks. We have 1 minute left, so last call for questions. Of course, if you think of anything after we close here, you can always email Jen. And you will receive the recording and all these action items and links in your email sometime in the next 24 hours. Okay. Oh, we just got a final question. What about the PJM board composition?
Sorry, my dog, there's a delivery person here it's freaking out. Yeah, I don't know what to say about that. I don't know if Nate has anything to say. I can follow up with you on that. But yeah, I mean, your concern is maybe changing the board composition or what the levers are there for that.
Yeah, well, just what I heard about it was that the board is a lot of industry, people stuck in the current, and not forward-looking people. And how does the board of PGM, get some forward-thinking people on it, not people who are just status quo people. I'm based on what I've read about it, it's a status quo board,
Yeah, I know there are, I think Rep. Rab had a bill about like transparency on the votes. And so I know there's a lot of thought and conversations about making PJM more transparent and trying to influence that more, but I don't know where it stands. Nate, I see you're off mute if you have something to add.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah, right. Yeah. Yeah, just something I read a while ago also that, the board could use some work, could use some new ideas on it, which would, but I don't know how legislation would address that because as you've said, Jen, it's like FERC directed, but anyway, thank you. Just wanted to keep that thought out there that, if there's some way to get different minds on the board, maybe that would benefit all of us. Thanks, Jen. Yeah,
Yeah.
great presentation. Thanks so much.
Thank you. I'll just finish by saying there was a report maybe last month from PJM essentially saying that the status quo is how the market runs cannot continue because of so many changes, but there wasn't anything about the status quo of sort of operations. But I do think there's, a time now to try to work on that. We know like Governor Shapiro and the rest of the governors in PJM, or a lot of them are concerned about that. So things are happening, but yeah, most of it is behind closed doors and we're never privy to it.
There is a PGM technical conference coming up in July that is open, and that's we're hoping to engage as a coalition. We're actually engaging there with trying to provide input some as to what we would like to see regarding the governance of PJM.
Okay, folks, I think we are wrapped up. We are at 5:32. So thanks everyone for joining us. Get out and enjoy the lovely weather. And stay tuned for your email. We do not have another session scheduled, so just keep your eye out for the calendar invite for our next episode of the briefing. Thank you.
Thank you.